Hello everybody, welcome to the Q&A&Critique number 94. So this is a special day. It is currently 20:09 UTC time, or locally 3 in the afternoon, more or less. So I'm here with the Bforartists community and with the very special guest, Paolo Brabo. So Paolo here is a very spectacular NPR artist, and I'm very excited to have him on the show today because not only is he late at night on a Friday on the other side of the world, he's also a very talented shader artist with a very cool art style and a very cool expression when it comes to color, form, shape, illustration, and story also with his pieces. So I'm going to be sharing the links, and I'm going to be starting this interview with Paolo. And from there, for the first half an hour, we're going to get to know about the deep, dark secrets or the general relaxed history of Paolo and all his work. From there, we're also going to be announcing the final deadline for the Bforartists splash screen competition for Bforartists 3.6.0 has finally come to an end during this show. We have a lot of submissions. Some of them and most of them are very good, and I'm really excited to take a look at each one of them with Paolo with a very good artistic criteria. And then at the end, we're going to open up the stage for the last 15 minutes of the show to allow questions. I'll try to keep my eyes open onto the social networks. So if you have a question for Paolo, well, feel free to queue them up and we'll ask them later in the show. So welcome to the Q&A&Critique. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy you're tuning in. And let's begin. So how are you, Paolo?
Hello, Andres. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am. I am all right. I am awake, even if it's 10 p.m. here in Italy, Milan, where I am. But I'm very happy to be here. I am curious, and I am liking what I see or what I hear.
That's really good. Great. We were talking a little bit earlier that you're in Italy at the moment, but you also come from down here in South America. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes. I am originally from Brazil, brasileiro. I am working and living in Italy since 2016. But before that, I used to work and live in Brazil. All my clients and all my work used to be there. And then I made this beautiful, unexpected change. And now I live in Italy and work here. So it's different, but it's beautiful in its own way.
Oh man, life is so exotic and rich. I like where you're coming from and where you are right now.
Mhm. Yes.
I
Yes.
passed
Please go.
I passed through Italy maybe nearly 10 years ago, very briefly, but I would
Uh,
definitely go back.
yeah, you definitely should.
Okay.
You know, when I first came to Italy, and was a short visit, maybe 27, and I was very impressed. And I let's say I fell in love with the place. And I said to myself, "Wow, it would be very cool to be here." And then it happened. So I'm very happy. I love Brazil, but living in Italy is cool. You should definitely come and enjoy a little bit more of
I
the
would
place.
like to. Okay. So just with all the globe trotting and moving around, the work that you have been doing, you mentioned that you worked for some clients. So what do you currently do today? What is your vocation at the moment?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because in reality, I have been an illustrator for many years, like um, 20. I have 20 years, I'd say, as of experience as an illustrator, mostly traditional, but also digital. And with digital, I used to do mostly vector, mostly Illustrator and Inkscape, um, some Photoshop and some Krita, but mostly vector. So I had this long experience with illustration. But here in Italy, I do something else. I work with something else. I keep drawing, and I have my own projects. But I work in an architecture studio. So I do mostly things related to architecture, to architectural representation, and finding beautiful, almost traditional ways to show to showcase architectural projects. That's what I do as a work.
That's really interesting. So
Yeah, it's very
you've been
yeah.
working with architecture and illustration for a very long time,
Yes,
and you're
yes.
bringing it through using a 2D and vector software. So how did you get into 3D, even though your basis was set in illustration?
Yeah. I have been 2D for a long time. I think that well, I had tried Blender. I think many years ago, but I had tried it for video editing, but it was well almost 10 years ago. I don't know, maybe more. And I remember I found the interface so complex. I told myself I will never be able to use Blender or work in 3D. And then um, during lockdown 2020, when everybody was at home, I came back to Blender, and I saw some interesting things that people were doing with Bruce Pencil and etc. And by then we were at Blender 2.0, 2.8 maybe, and the interface was already changed. It was more user friendly, and since we were in lockdown, I started playing with it. I started playing with 3D in Blender. So that's how I started, and I was very interested in the non-photorealistic aspect of it. So I found some interesting artists, tutorials, and it started.
And that's how it started. It's very curious to
Yeah.
see you get into Blender due to the sequencer. I remember my first time getting into Blender was because of the compositor. Like,
Wow.
so similar story. And then I started
Yeah,
using the
yeah,
sequencer too. It's kind of crazy that those were the first things of Blender. Not the 3D
yeah,
aspects,
yeah,
but the other aspects.
yeah. It's about but in a way it's inevitable because Blender has provides such a rich experience. You can do almost everything with it. So it's it's mind bending. I think that everyone finds a new way of entrance of arriving to it,
That's true.
a point of entry, a different point of entry.
Okay.
And nowadays, I use Blender a lot. I used to joke that for me it's easier by now illustrating in Blender than in Illustrator, which was my tool of choice. Uh, I, I I find that Blender provides me particularly a very intuitive, very interesting um, way of working. So it's very rewarding. It's very addictive, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Addicted. I'm addicted too. I work and there's hundreds of hours in my month. I understand. Cool. I have a person here on Twitch. He's saying that Eevee brought him to Twitter, to Blender. Sorry,
Uh-huh.
the instantaneity of converting what your brain is, image or imagination interacting makes it feel like traditional art to some degree. Maybe there's
No,
some of
yes.
that transferal of changing the traditional art into the more interactive aspect of 3D art in your work.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it counts because I use mostly I use Blender as I used Illustrator basically, and then I use Blender to do things that with Illustrator I wouldn't be able to do at all. So it depends a lot on EV, on the real time aspect of it, because everything you're showing here, this everything, all these works, they are EV, and
Yes,
and with very low samples, 8 samples, and all of these were rendered on the viewport, not even the conventional render. It was viewport rendering
it's very fast.
because I wanted to be fast, and with EV you can do that,
That's
and
true.
with and if we are achieving for that non-photorealistic look, I sometimes prefer to use a few samples possible. Sometimes one, sometimes two, because I like the grittiness of the effect sometimes.
True. So this particular effect that I'm looking here, where it's animated with the lines and the strips and the beautiful colors and the
Mhm.
shadow and the other types of colors and the light, this is part of one of your projects. Could you tell me a bit
Yes,
more
yes.
about how you did this?
Oh wow! No, these renders. We are using the new shader I've made. It's 30, and it's available on Blender Market, on Gumroad, and uh, it's basically a shader that that makes the coloring for you and makes the painting for you. Everything you have to do is uh, bring lights to your scene, and everything else will be rendered, and with this stroke painterly effect that you can control, you can adjust to your liking. But for instance, on the image of the dog you were looking before, when the color changes, everything that happened there, yeah, was just moving lights. Nothing else was. I was doing nothing else but moving the lights, and with the lights, the color change, the color expression changes, and the idea was make something that looked very painterly and could be adjustable. When in this image, when the stroke size changes, I am actually uh, working on the sliders and the options. You can do as detailed as you want, as wild as you want, as you see some of the examples here. And I'm using this shader a lot because I like the painterly, not realistic at all effect of it,
Yeah.
and it's very fast. It works on all these images you're looking at now. We're looking at these were rendered as 4 samples on the viewport, so they are blazingly fast.
I
And I
really,
like the grittiness,
yes, it's absolutely. There's
the
one thing,
painterly.
yeah, it's kind of a marriage between digital and illustration and
Yeah,
also
yeah,
traditional. Because
yeah, yeah,
I can see the pixels from the shader sometimes,
yeah,
but then I
yeah,
see the brush
yeah,
strokes in
yeah.
other areas. They're very cool style. I love
Oh,
it.
yeah. It's a little bit wild to because the color expression as the color expression depends on lights, white lights that you move around your shape. your mesh. It's a wild experience, but I'm loving the possibility of it.
Okay. So you've built this coming in from illustration. What was your thought process about building the shader? How did you begin constructing this material?
Okay, then wow, I play with Blender a lot. As I told you, for me it's an addiction. So I remember in the beginning I watched 1,000 tutorials, and as an aside, I think that we all agree because you all are probably more used to this than me, but Blender has an amazing community. So I found 1,000 tutorials, and many questions I had were already answered. So when I started making shaders, I had excellent teachers. Most videos from YouTube, but wow, uh, the community is amazing everywhere. So I started experimenting. I started following tutorials and then experimenting. But the what really uh, uh, shaders like this one were born because of the shader to RGB node.
Yes, I love that
Uh,
node,
and,
the
and
legendary
wow,
one.
that's I think that's what made my final Blender conversion was that because the possibilities are endless, really. So this even with this painterly, very abstract effects, everything here starts with the shader or around the shader to RGB node. As I told you, the colors, the color expression in this shader are determined by the lights, but where the lights are, and even when they are, as you see here, very expressive, very abstract, they are built around the shader to RGB nodes. There are a lot of uh, math and texture, all of those procedural, a lot of Voronoi texture everywhere. But but we can do that because we have an excellent base.
That's right.
Uh, Blender invites you to experimentation to a level just very oh and this thing you're showing now. I love that you can define the look of your brush strokes, and I like especially the fact that everything is procedural, that we have no bitmap textures there. Even in the image on the right, the high crunchiness, everything there is procedural, and I love that it is possible. Well,
Yeah, it's very
if I
beautiful.
had to do something like that in Illustrator, I would have to import bitmap textures. I had to search for that. And in the Blender experience, you may put everything yourself there. It's, it's all there.
Oh, there. Yes.
Blender alone.
It is a lot of love in this. I really like how you do it. But there's another aspect that really impresses me about this particular shader is the way that you control color. Of all your work that you've been doing, especially here on Twitter, one of my favorite pieces is not only, well, even without color, your shape language when it comes to anatomy, characters, and design is also incredibly beautiful. So
Oh, thank you.
I know you've had a lot of experience in illustration, but what is the technical aspect of working with the shader in NPR is one element of Blender, but you're also bringing in the other element from your illustration and architecture and your experience over the past 20 years. What are these
Absolutely.
artistic elements that you're bringing? What are the fundamentals? How are you building this style?
Absolutely. Well, I think that with time, but I think you are particularly right when you say that. Even if I feel like a beginner when in the 3D world with Blender, I have this baggage of experience with illustration, and that helps me a lot. Um, and in a way, not only it helps me, but it conditions and open new possibilities. Because like this image you're showing, this man, I used to draw this or things like this in 2D, but the possibility of making this in 2D, it changes my outlook of things. So I think it's a two-way road. I bring that experience from the my years as an illustrator, but it also changes me because I think, wow, this this open up so many possibilities. And but I think that um, one of the many aspects that helps me a lot is the and one of the things, since we are talking about with people who use Blender for art and etc. I think that what helps me a lot is things like composition, like where to um, crop, where to put your center of interest, and those are things that were having worked so long with illustration. These are very natural in me, and sometimes I see very beautiful work made with Blender, but I think, well, maybe some better composition would make this look, well, even better.
I guess through the experience, you find what's making it work and you have a central focal point that you're bringing in. And you know,
Yes, yes,
you're looking for that element that you want to pop out from the shape. Interesting.
absolutely.
So, with this particular piece, this one really spoke out to me when I saw it on Twitter a little while ago. Was this
Mm.
particular, the angular shape of the character, his pose, the almost the minimal shape design and the sharp angles using your shader, and also this kind of fuzzy silhouette around him and the floating composited effects around him. Could you break this piece down for me?
Yes, I could. First, I think the most important thing is that the style itself, the way that the proportions work, these this has always been my illustration style. It was already in me. So everything else is just work, and doing it in Blender is a lot of fun. So I think I said it on Twitter. I think that one of the things that I like very much about this piece is that the mesh itself. I used curves. Um, it's only curves. We don't have real modeling here. They are curves, and
Really?
you know that you can define the radius of the curve when you are in the edit mode, and that's how I do the thin parts and the thicker parts, and I absolutely love that you can do that in Blender. So the the limitations of the use of curves, let's see, they make the this stylized effects pop up, like on the face, on or the arms. They are just curves, and everything else is shader. And the sturdy shader you can see everywhere here in his arms, and also on the shirt. But here I use the mask with how do you call it? A wave node.
A wave
There's a
note.
mask. So there are two different materials of the sturdy node on the sturdy shader on the shirt. And as a mask, you have wave texture. So it looks like that.
Wow. Okay.
And just one other last thing. You talk about the glow around
Yes.
the figure, no?
Yes.
That's very simple. I am using it everywhere, but it's a very simple effect. In reality, it's just how do you call it, a plane that's behind him, and uh, the transparency, the opacity of that is determined by an ambient occlusion node. So the part of the plane which is close to the mesh is not transparent, and that's
Okay.
it. It's a very simple setup.
You've just blown my mind. Okay. So
Yeah,
you're using the ambient occlusion as a mask to drive the shape of the character behind him. And that's,
exactly.
wow, that's so clever.
Yeah, yeah. If you, there's in Twitter we have, maybe I can find it. Find it. There is uh, um, a video of Bull Terrier, the dog.
Yes, I saw that one. Let me just go
Yeah,
to it quickly.
and that
Go
is
for
also
it.
the same thing. There behind the dog there is
There he is.
a plane. Ah, there he is, a plane. And the color you see, it's ambient occlusion. The plane is fixed, and the dog is moving, and the parts of the mesh which is the dog, which are close to the plane behind him. I don't know the color. It's a very simple setup, but I simply love how it looks.
I love it
It
too.
looks very aerograph illustration from the 50s, maybe 40s.
Yes, a lot like an
And
airbrush almost, an airbrush
yes,
stencil.
looks an airbrush, but it's moving, and but it's real time. So I am using this everywhere.
I love that style.
And
I think it's so good.
no, it's cool. I agree. I love it too.
Okay.
And this is something that I would, if I were doing a 2D illustration, I would use the airbrush on Photoshop for that. But here we are talking 3D and we're talking real time
With animation, with
and with
rotation, with
animation.
new cameras.
And is that uh, it's cool, man. It's cool. That's why I say it's addictive.
Addicting,
And
yes.
and just to repeat it, such a simple setup. The ambient occlusion down
Okay.
and a color ramp.
Color ramp, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So another thing that really strikes out is, okay, so you've got the shapes, you've got this design, you're using really interesting techniques to bring it out, to make it work fast, and you're very practical when it comes to designing and developing the system. How are
mhm.
you designing your colors? What's your thought process behind the color? Because your colors are
Yeah.
immaculate. They are so, so good. So how are you doing this?
Thank you. You know that I I am still studying colors. I have an endless folder of references that I come back to because I'm still learning. But I think that it's in the end, I think that you use the colors that give you pleasure, that you feel that you feel alright for something. And in a way, this third shade is the one we were talking about first, and that we are looking at now. the cool thing about and the wild thing about it is that since the color expression is determined by the way you move lights around the shape, the mesh, and the base colors are very important. The ones are part of the root of the shader, and I think these are very fun, very fun.
That is fun. So, which colors speak to you the most, and why?
Oh wow, that, that's an unfair question, but in general I like very bright colors, very saturated. Here in Italy, they tell me I am very Brazilian in my color choice because for many reasons this is a moment in Italian design where the colors are very muted, and I use them very strong, very clashing. The, I use those yellows, reds, but because I love them, I like them very much. Well, see, here we are looking at a very interesting use of the sturdy shader, and I absolutely love how painterly this looks.
Yes, it's all painted and scratched in. So great.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and all the brush strokes and all the everything here is procedural. So wow, I like it. Blender is addictive. I can tell you that.
It's interesting. One thing I noticed from your colors is you get a very strong cold color and a very strong warm color.
Absolutely.
And then you
Yeah,
use
yeah.
a very clever
The
and
clash.
tasteful clash of bright and dark as well.
You see, yes, yes. This piece here is mostly oranges and blues with a touch of violet. Uh, but 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 you know, I keep in my mind. I have all the references I'm I'm thinking of while I work. There's some green there, you see,
Yeah, it
but
almost looks yellow.
it's yeah. So
Tasteful. I have a question here on Twitch, and they asked when it
go go.
I think it's about the car. When you develop the car to kind of get that multi-layered brush effect, do you have multiple meshes inside each other or inverse normals or things like this?
But this that one? No. This is just how do you call it? Well, I forget the modifier. It's a displace modifier. The original mesh, which I found on the Sketchfab, it's way more it's very traditional, and I wanted to make it wider, so I used a displace modifier and with some texture, like Voronoi texture, which on which the displacement was based.
That
So and here in the I made some animation of it. It's because in the end of the animation, the displacement is less pronounced. Here it's less pronounced. Here it's less pronounced. But in the beginning, it's wilder. You see that the door is very yeah. But in the end, the displacement is less pronounced, and the effect is still cool. But here the effect is less pronounced.
I see it. I see what's happening. That was a,
Yeah, yes, in the beginning it's destroyed, and then it's
and then
going
it
back to
shapes up.
normal. Yeah.
Clever.
But I think though I'm sure I used it because I think that the sturdy shader being so stylized invites some wild shapes. That's the same thing I did with the coffee maker, the mocha. the Italian,
Ah, yes,
which was
part of the
which
splash
was a,
screen.
a which was a normal, a very normal mesh, which I mangled with a displace modifier because I think that it's part of the vibe of the sturdy shape. This is a regular coffee machine, but it looks very distorted because I used the displacement modifier.
They're beautiful.
Yeah,
Which
beautiful. No, yeah, I like it too. But that's it. It's part of the general vibe of my work. Like in the gondoliere uh, image we were looking at before. It's
which
I
was
love
this one.
this the stylization of shapes, and so I keep doing it everywhere, all the
That's
time.
good. So I've noticed that I guess when you work with NPR, it's very forgiving when it comes to topology and geometry. You can break things.
Absolutely.
You can.
And of this, some of this topology you shouldn't look at closely.
That's true. And that's how you manage to work
Yeah,
using curves,
yeah, yeah,
using sharp
yeah.
angles.
This gondolier we are looking at, it's curved, but in the dog below, instead it has a right geometry. I used some a more traditional method of working on it.
Yeah, so
So
it's a
it
little bit
depends.
easier to rig, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. So I've noticed that with your artwork, following you on Twitter for quite some time,
Mhm.
I thought, well, as a creative, I thought you are very busy with what you do, and you with your full-time job, your artwork on the side.
Mhm.
Happened, where'd it go? Lost you for a second
Mhm.
on Twitter.
Yeah.
I went down to where was I? There we go, this piece. So I've noticed that you have a varying different types of styles. And with this particular style, I noticed it was almost an experiment with a procedural material inspired by another artist, Ian McKee,
Mhm.
which I really like.
Wow. Yes.
And I
Really
wanted to
like.
ask you, so what is your inspiration process? Or how do you get into a new experiment? Where do you begin?
Well, I think that in general, I think that the most accurate answer is that it always start with experimentation. And in this particular case, I had already started working on this shader you're looking here. I wanted something that looked like maybe ink because the beautiful trees that Imaki does, they are absolutely gorgeous, and I was inspired by that look. And at the same time, I I was thinking about using geometry nodes to make a wild stylized tree. And this tree here, and also the other one we showed before, the blue one, they are made with geometry nodes, both of them.
That's cool.
So so it's experimentation, and they don't exactly look like I want yet, but it's part of endless experimentation. And see, here we are looking at two different inspirations. One was making this shader that should look like some ink strokes, etc. And I also wanted to um, use geometry nodes to make some very radically stylized tricks. And I'm still working at it. I'm still experimenting on both accounts.
It's fascinating. Some things
Yeah, it's
I really like this like hull shape of almost like a pencil shader that you have going around the actual
yeah,
strokes, line art in the black. Very interesting.
it's,
Good.
yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And in this particular case, the tree itself, the trunk, is geometry not, but the tree, the part of the leaves above, and, it's just a just a blob. Of, it was a sphere, but I mangled it and used some kind of crazy shader.
Yeah,
But and when you look at it, you're looking at uh, static render, but I think it's amazing that this is real time. This is 3D, and you can rotate around it. You can make the camera dance around it. And since we are talking geometry nodes, I can just change the seed of the general tree and generate endless trees with the same general outlook. So we are talking endless addiction. The possibilities are endless.
that's right. Imagine trying
Uh,
to create this by hand on a piece of paper and then you want to
wow,
like
yes,
go through the
yes,
roots. That would be almost impossible.
absolutely, absolutely. And so we have some time before that. I worked on
Oh yeah, time is ticking. You've had me enamored with everything you're doing,
yes,
learning about your thought
see,
process, your experimentation
see,
process.
yeah, yeah.
I almost
So
got distracted.
so yes, so in the end, I think that it's all about experimentation. The Blender community has invites you to experiment all the time. Every tutorial you look at, and then it invites you to do something different based on it.
That's right. Okay, so I'm going to finish this part of the interview or this section of the show with this particular piece, which was one of my favorites of yours, where you have a diorama with a character on the bike, and then the camera just slows down and stops right on this, almost like a magazine cover.
Yes, yes,
This
yeah,
piece,
very
the way that you work with
good.
the flow, the gesture, the shape language, the working of the lighting, the subtle brush strokes on some of the elements, the illustrative vectorial pieces or concepts on everything else. It's
Yes, yes, and others. This is if you stop one of the frames, it will be one illustration I would have made in Adobe Illustrator one. But the fact that I do this setup, and from there I can have endless um, endless images, endless editorial possibilities of telling this story. I absolutely love it.
yes, there's so
And
much you can
and
do.
and then the last thing, the interesting thing for me is that the clouds ring you see around this this. It was my very first geometry node setup.
Oh, this was
You
your
see
first one.
yeah, yeah, the ring of clouds
Yes.
that you see here. It was my very first geometry node setup, and I was so very proud of it.
You
It was very
should
fun.
be.
Thank you.
That's cool. Okay. Well, if you're still here, um, RPG from Twitch, he said that it's the tree aspects that we built, that you built with the geometry nodes, looks a lot like a mix between Indian ink and Copic markers. They love it.
Ex- Exactly. No. Thank you very much. I'm still playing with it. I'll come back to this. You
Yep.
can be sure.
Cullen also mentioned that the shaders are very tasteful. Alan Watts, who was a guest from last week, he's also a big fan of your work. And I may invite him to the stage in a couple of minutes. If you guys want to ask some questions, I'll send you an invite in the Discord server and you can come and ask a question. But before then, I would like to give a little commercial break, I suppose. The Bforartists competition. So today, Marty Fowles just purchased your shader and he's already started to use it. Here it is right here.
See, I have received a notification. Cool. Wow. See? Wow.
It works already. That's good.
Works.
Okay. So this past couple of weeks, we've started doing a competition for the Bforartists Discord community to create a splash screen for the software for Bforartists 3.6.0. The first prize is the shader tool Tradigialist shader pack from Alan Watts from last week that we talked about, and the FX nodes by CG on Fire, or EAD. And second place, we have the FX nodes, and third place with a bonus 30 points for the next competition, and third place has 30 points for the next competition as well. So we currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 entries, which means 3 people are going to hit the top. But we have a very creative criteria. So I wanted to, if you would take a look at the competition submissions channel, Paolo, we got the last minute one by Quackers, and we also have a new piece by White Rooster Productions, who's here in the audience. And I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think so far concerning originality, creativity, technique? How do you see this latest piece by Quackers?
This late one. Yeah, I was just having a quick look on. Oh, and then what are the ones? Let's just take a sweet look. This is by
Quackers. Yes.
Yeah, I like it. Well, I like it.
Very clean. The colors are very clear.
And we were talking about color before, and this is very, very well thought color scheme.
I really love the rings.
Yeah, and the details.
The characters here as well, nicely drawn.
No, yes, yeah. I like the commitment of it to itself. Very, very cool.
Good. It's a very high contender.
Yeah, and also the we were talking also before about composition, and this is has great composition. The way that we have two sides, but the curves of the meteors, like I don't know what they are, the stars, they make a very beautiful grand gesture that embraces everything. So we don't have just two parts because we have the gesture of the falling stars that embraces everything. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very nice flow. I agree. The next piece is by White Rooster Productions. It was submitted this week. This is also a somewhat fan art to a Star Wars ship that I know from Naboo. And
I don't know.
but it took on an inspiration from an actual photograph of a World War II aircraft in the sunset. So he took the detailing from the concept and stepped it up a game. Stepped it up a notch.
Yeah, well. Yeah, it's beautiful. But I particularly like that it has elements of realism, but it also it has very much of the spirit of old illustrations, like old movie posters. Illustrations from movie posters. So I like this mix of realistic and illustration finish that this one has.
Yes, it reads very clearly. Quite well.
Yes.
White Rooster never disappoints. I love his work.
Wow.
Hopefully I can have him on the show soon. I have been talking with him. We're kind of arranging it. So we will get to know more about his work in the near future soon. You heard it from me. Okay, the next piece that we have, this was Kumarei, which is actually here. I would love to hear your opinion of Kumarei, which is another realistic piece. I think we had a look at this briefly last week.
Ooh. It's beautiful, but again, realistic, but with a particular finish, which tells me about an illustration ideal. The colors here were very unrealistic in a good way. So this is beautiful, beautiful. The floating things and the depth of field, cool.
Very good.
I love it.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, so we still have a number of other entries to go. But I would like to invite those who are in the stage, if you'd like to ask some questions, or invite you to speak, feel free. So we're going to finish up with some answers, hopefully. And if you'd like to, feel free. So we have Marty Fouts on the stage. Do you have a question? And we also have Kumarei, who is also with the piece that we have currently on screen.
Kumarei.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Greetings. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
Yes, I'm looking at this beautiful work. I have one. This is beautiful, but I have one important question. The color, the final color, is this the compositor? Is this Photoshop? What is it?
Well, yeah, the color grading is heavily influenced in Photoshop for sure.
Wow,
the basic render is extremely boring. It's like there's no popping colors anywhere, but that's kind of what you need to do, right, when you're trying to do some not completely realistic stuff in terms of color. You have to kind of go in and tweak it a bit. But this was really fun to tweak for sure.
No, the result is beautiful, and I absolutely understand. Wow, super cool. But the particles, the floating particles, are they from the render or Photoshop?
That's from the render. It's from a geometry node setup I made a while back.
Beautiful.
For like procedural ambient particles and stuff. So it's kind of heavy when you have this many, but the effect is pretty nice because you kind of get the depth of field as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it reminds me, Gleb Alexandrov released a procedural dust animation add-on just recently.
I haven't tried it yet, but I would definitely do it.
I would highly recommend it. It's a good way to work with particles.
Good.
Cool.
Oh man, this is okay. So just to clarify about the competition before we continue with your question, Marty, if you have one, is the competition has finally finished. So that means submissions are now closed. But it's going to take me about a week to analyze each piece, run it through my judgmental criteria to conclude the final winners. Next week, next Friday, I'm going to hopefully sit down and go through every piece and explain my qualifications, which is going to be a bit like an open critique per piece, note by note. And then we will announce the winners for the final prize. So your opinions today, Paolo, actually influences a lot of how I have my bias. But there's going to be a big drum roll. But hopefully next week we're all going to enjoy the event, enjoy the results, enjoy the winners. Also feel encouraged, those who come in the second and third place, to try again, and also those who are still playing to know where to improve, know how to have a good time, get into the game, and so that you never know, your splash screen could be on the first load of Bforartists in the near future. Because these releases come out 3 times a year. So there are 3 chances to do this. So I'm really good with that. So Marty, you have a question for Paolo?
I do. You have, as Killer already said, a very tasteful choice in palettes in addition to a brilliant style as described already. And I'm curious if either you or Dre's have any recommendations, because I'm really bad at palettes, and recommendations for how I get better at choosing my own color palettes.
Wow. I think that it really depends on the things you like. As I told Andrew before, I have a huge folder of basically illustration works of older people, to which I go back constantly, because I love the work, and so I get inspired by the use of arts, and keep experimenting. Sometimes when I think I have finished a piece in Blender, I go back to it and try to use a more consistent palette choice. I change everything based on the ITER palette. So it's an endless work. It's inspiration from other people, and you trying to make them make your work worthy of those inspirations.
That's a very good exercise.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I should practice that.
Yeah, no. We I don't think we have arrived there, but there is a blender animation I made it somewhere on Twitter itself. It's a flight of over a stylized version of Rio de Janeiro, and that thing. I remember I stole colors from a single illustration, because I said I have to. I looked at an illustration I like, and I essentially picked up the colors from that. So it depends on the project and the look you are achieving for. Since my general work is very stylized, as we are working here, colors color stylization makes also part of the game.
Wow. So finding your inspiration and recreating it with your own artwork helps you to define the colors as well. That's
Absolutely.
okay. I have room for one more question. I asked to Twitch and YouTube if they have a question. We'll just give a quick little moment for that. Meanwhile, I would like to say thank you, Paolo, for your time today. Thank you for sharing your creative process, your experimental process, your journey through the different countries, and also your motivation to bring out the type of stories and colors and emotion and gesture and flow and the composition and the focal points of your work. I also want to say thanks for sharing your shader to the public. If you guys want to use it, you can. It's about $15 or €15 on Gumroad or Blender Market. So it's a pretty reasonable price, about 2 bears. So drinks are on. In this case, you buy the shader, drinks are on you. You've invited Paolo for a nice one. And
Absolutely. And please, and if I would invite, I invite people if they use the shader. I'm very curious to see and to look what you're doing with it. We share it whatever you want on Instagram and Twitter.
yes, please
Share
do.
with me. I'm curious. So
Yeah, you could tag him on Twitter underneath the user Brabo, the same name as the Discord user. So we have a question from Twitch. The question is by Pidgey. Are you planning to do exhibitions at some point?
oh wow, yes. I think that yes. But I'm presently working on many projects, and I'm very motivated. So yes, maybe yes. And one interesting thing would be making an animated exhibition. I'm talking with this about this idea with some friends here in Italy, and an exhibition of animated art. I think it would be cool. So we are thinking about it. Yes.
Ah, yes, animated art. I think it's we need some good screens to do that.
Absolutely.
Lately, there's a new technology that I've been enjoying through the Looking Glass and a couple others where you have
Yes.
parallax 3D monitors.
Super.
I would love, the big ones are very expensive, but if there was an art gallery that had them, that would be so great.
Yeah, I think that I have heard that in Milan, some places already have them. So we are looking into it.
Excellent.
Excellent.
You do have to spam your Twitter once you do. I'd love to see what happens with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll keep you updated.
So everybody on Twitch, on YouTube, here in the Discord server, thank you for connecting today. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for listening and joining out. RPG says you could also print your work. They're perfectly print worthy as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
thanks everybody for everything. And thank you, Paolo, for your time today and for sharing everything once again. So next week, we're going to take a look at the final results of the Bforartists competition. It's kind of like an open critique and also a celebration for everybody's art and your submissions from the past couple of weeks. It's so exciting. I'm so honored to see you guys participate, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll see you next Friday, same time, same place. Have a good weekend.